welcome back to our 11th episode of Capital Interns. A podcast essentially helps those high school students, first year or second year university students, to identify the career path that they want for them.
Today's guest is a fourth year student in the York University Sheridan College Specialized Honors Program in Graphics Design. She is a freelance graphics designer on the side, is the design editor for the Artichoke Magazine, recently completed 2 summer internships at HOLR Magazine and Impact North Agency. She is also the recruitment chair for the Kappa Phi Xi sorority and a dance instructor for the York Lions Dance Club.
She's also a really incredibly talented graphics designer, and I've known because I've actually bought the yearbook at high school, and a good friend of mine in English class in grade 11. Welcome, Sarah Carriere, to the podcast. How are you, Sarah?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. It's awesome that you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us on the podcast today, Sarah. On today's episode, we'll be talking about Sarah's experience as a graphics designer, her motivations and journey throughout high school, her joint degree program, and her passions.
So, the first thing I want you to talk about, Sarah, is your first internship at HOLR Magazine. What is HOLR Magazine and what did you do there?
Yeah, so HOLR Magazine, I interned for them from May to June. It is a media company based in Toronto. So the company itself, besides having 2 biannual print issues, they also do a lot of online media, such as like their website, blog posts on their website, all their social media, stuff like that. It's a lifestyle company and it's geared towards a millennial audience.
Yo, nice.
Relatable.
That sounds really cool. Yeah. What was the hiring process like for the job?
So when I was originally looking for possible internships to do this summer, I had picked up a magazine on my campus, actually, that was HOLR. And when I started thinking about who I wanted to intern for, I remembered that I had this magazine laying on my desk, and I knew that they were located in Toronto. So I didn't even see an ad for them. Look, if they were looking for interns, I had no idea where in Toronto they were located, if they even do interns, how big their design team was. So I essentially just Googled them, got their email, and sent an email saying if you have any positions, I would be interested, gave them a copy of my portfolio. And then from there, they looped me in with their art director. And I had one interview in person with the art director there.
Nice. It's like it was meant to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting like how you chose your first internship through something that you actually used and you actually seen firsthand. So you know, like, hey, maybe I could improve this product.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty
day.
cool being able to like see something that I got like in my hands that was supposed to be like for enjoyment, and then being able to like work for them later in the summer. That was really cool to be able to like hold the actual magazine.
How big was the design team?
So the design team's actually incredibly small, which I didn't know until I was being interviewed. So their art director is also the only graphic designer on their team. The entire full-time team of HOLR company is only about 20 to 25 people. So the art director does pretty much all the graphic design and then outsources photographers and writers and stuff like that. So the team was very small. That was one of the reasons also that I got the internship, is because the art director had a lot of work to do and could really help. And I kind of acted like as her assistant.
I see. And did the role meet your expectations as to what a graphics designer would be doing in the real world? Because I know like for various like internships, they give you real world experience, but I'm not really familiar about, what it's like for an actual graphics designer internship.
Yeah, because it was online this summer, unfortunately due to COVID, it was a completely different experience of what it was supposed to be. This summer was supposed to be me working on the print issues, seeing the issue actually being printed and doing all the spreads and the layout editorial work, whereas the summer ended up being me doing a lot of digital work, social media advertisements, banners for their websites, etc. So while it didn't really fulfill an editorial kind of opportunity, it fulfilled more of like a branding opportunity with the company. It was definitely nice to be able to do some real work like outside the classroom, whereas like in all the classes that I take for design, they're kind of like make-believe projects. So to be able to do something that's actually for a company was very fun.
Awesome.
What was the biggest, your biggest takeaway from the job, especially because you worked from home and not in the office?
I think that outside of like a design point of view, but more from a work point of view, I am definitely not a work from home kind of girl. I think that doing the 2 internships this summer made me realize that I much more prefer office work a lot better, just for the collaboration and be able to like talk to people in person. But I think something that was really important that I realized a lot is when you're constantly doing design work for one company, you have to follow their guidelines throughout, and it has to be very consistent. So I think I learned a lot more about consistency and really following brand guidelines.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I remember for IEEE one time, their graphics designer was showing me some of the guidelines that he follows for the club logo, and I didn't know there was so much effort put into like the type of font that she used, the color that she used, the size of it and everything, and it was so like, wow, there's so much behind the scenes.
Yeah, there's a lot like details behind the scenes for any company.
Yeah.
Their style guidelines of what their brand identity is like is very in depth. It's not just, oh, you have to use this font. If you're using it, it has to be at this size, and it has to be this color, and it has to be this kerning, etc. So it definitely gets a lot more into detail from the designer's perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of your second internship, it was at Impact North. How would you compare it to HOLR Magazine, and was the role similar to what you want to pursue in the future?
They were similar in some aspects and different in others. Because HOLR ended up being a shorter internship than planned, it was more of like a part-time kind of work. Whereas with Impact North, it was like full 40 hours a week. And also, too, Impact North is a bigger agency in general. So it was a lot more, not necessarily professional, but it was a lot more organized just because they have so many different departments. So I got my own email. I would join Zoom calls with the whole team and not just talk to my supervisor. The company also offered programs for their interns to take courses on Udemy website, which is really nice because I got to take courses outside of the classroom that were really relevant. So it was definitely pretty different. And then on top of that, because they are a branding agency, they have a variety of clients. So I got to follow style guidelines essentially for 5 different companies, all very different from the next. And all of the projects assigned between those companies were very different. So one day I'll be doing a logo for a company, coming up with the brand style. And then the next week I'll be working for a realtor company, doing like a 25-page spread that's going to be printed. So digital to print work, variety of companies, variety of styles. So it was really cool being able to work with a lot of different brands.
And so how does it work when you work for a client? Do they give you all the details of what they want, or do you have to come up with the ideas yourself and present it to them?
It definitely depends on the project. Since I am the intern, everything got sent to the art director that I worked under, and she kind of sorted through what she wanted to assign me and what was appropriate for an intern to do. So depending on what it was, there was different tasks. So for example, the booklet that I did for the realtor company, that was one of my favorite projects. So the style guidelines were already laid out, and so was the sizing, and so was all the text and all the photos. So I basically just had to make it look pretty on a page, but everything was already planned out. It was just a matter of laying it out. Whereas like the company that was called The Lab, which is a photography studio that's up and coming, and I did a brand guideline from them. My director essentially just said, this is the title, figure out an identity, and it was total free range. So it definitely depends on who I'm working for and what I'm doing. That'll depend on the limited things I'm allowed to do, essentially.
Okay, I see. Is it more challenging to do something that's already laid out for you, or coming up with the ideas to present?
That's a really good question. I feel like it definitely depends on the project, because I feel like sometimes when you're totally free and can do whatever you want, it's kind of hard to figure out like what you want to do specifically to narrow it down. Whereas sometimes when you're given a style guideline, it makes it easy, but then it's also like you feel restricted at the same time. So it definitely depends on the project, but there's definitely been positives to both ends.
Okay, I see. And what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about the graphics design industry?
I feel like the amount of work that we put in to our designs, like lots of times you'll hear people being like, oh, just whip me up a quick logo, and they'll want to pay a small amount because they think we do it in 2 seconds, and that's the end of that. Whereas like there are universities that offer 4-year programs like for a reason, and sometimes the logo may only take half an hour, and sometimes it'll take like 2 full weeks of effort depending on what you're doing. So I definitely think it's people outside of the creative industry assuming that it's a lot easier than it is.
Yeah, for sure. Because you don't see it right on the outside. You just see the final product, not that work that goes behind it.
Exactly. Yeah, no one really sees the behind the scenes, so people just assume that it's whipped up really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And also, Sarah, I was wondering, like, when did you actually decide to pursue graphics design?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I always was interested. I just didn't know it was a field. I remember when I was younger, I wouldn't want to write my essays in middle school. I was just looking forward to making the title pages and picking the font. Yeah, I mean, I always been interested in it, I just didn't know what it was. And then when I was in the 11th grade at the high school that me and Rafid went to, there was a yearbook class, and the theme was magazines that year. And I could not stop talking about that class to literally everybody I knew. So I was about 16, and then my mom said, you know, that's a career, right? That's called graphic design. And I hadn't really heard that term before. So I started doing research when I was 16, and I wanted to be a graphic designer ever since. And the theme of the yearbook that year was magazines. So I have wanted to be a graphic designer for a magazine. I remember that. Since I was 16, yeah.
And for those who are actually wondering about the yearbook, I will say that the yearbook that year was so well done and so well put together. Even though, like, I was still, like, salty. I remember when I received it, I was salty. I was like, there's not enough pictures of me. There's, like, only one. And that was, like, that was at the back. But I completely understand. Like, honestly, it was such a great yearbook because of how well done it was. And I was like, damn, I wish there was more photos of me in this yearbook because, like, this looks so good. But yeah, it's kudos to you and, like, the rest of the yearbook team. Like, it was a really great team effort.
How big was the yearbook team?
The team itself, so it was one grade 12 class and one grade 11 class. So between all the students, it was just over 50 people, I'd say.
That's a big team.
Yeah, it is definitely a really big team. Within the 50 people, like, there was different roles and different, like, team captains and everything like that to keep it organized. But considering, like, the length of the yearbook itself, it was definitely a big production and a lot of effort got put into it for sure.
How many hours did you guys spend on the yearbook anyways? I'm actually curious.
I could not tell you. Me personally, when I was in the 12th grade, I was one of the editor-in-chiefs. So besides spending a semester, one period a day for a whole semester, there was a lot of late nights. I remember coming home at 10:30 p.m. some nights.
God.
And this was in high school, so It was a lot of extra work outside of class time that a lot of people didn't know or didn't see. They just, again, saw the final product, so they didn't realize how much work got put into it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, I bet you, like, that's still probably one of your biggest projects to date, because the yearbook was easily over, like, 100 pages, I think, right? Wasn't it 200 or something like that? Yeah. It
was probably closer to 200, if not more, yeah.
Is that something you guys do every year? Or was it specifically that year that it was 200?
No, it's every year. Earl March Secondary School specifically takes their yearbook very seriously, considering that it's a class for both grade 11 and grade 12 students. It's not an extracurricular, and we get it professionally printed with hardcover. And I remember when we got it printed, it was hardcover, it was matte, and that spot UV gloss.
It was so beautiful.
So, it was definitely, we take it very seriously. Some of my peers that are in design with me would tell me about their yearbook experience in high school, because that's kind of like what we all kind of figured out that we like design. And I had realized that Earl March took it the next level into how much detail.
It definitely sounds like the next level, because none of that was part of my yearbook for sure. That sounds really cool.
Darina, and it was so big that they made a dedicated lip sync music video with the entire school in it.
Yeah, we also took the advertising pretty seriously, because when we sent it off to get printed, it was usually, I think, like around April or so, and then high school doesn't end until end of June. So with a couple months free every year, the kids that were in the high school class for yearbook would spend time making like an actual advertisement and like posting it on YouTube, and it was a very big production.
Yeah, I can send it to you after the episode, but like, yeah, it was big.
I'd love to see.
I'm actually wondering about, how much like high school and yearbook actually prepared you for your university program. Do you feel like, you got the right amount of resources for you to be prepared for university, or do you feel like high school could have done a little bit more?
I think that I had a really great experience with the media department at my high school. I can't speak on behalf of other high schools, but ours prepared me quite a bit.
Yeah.
I was fluent in Photoshop and InDesign by the time I graduated. So when I came into first year university, it was only one program I didn't know how to use. But out of my whole year, I was one of the very few people that have touched InDesign before. So I ended up being the person to ask questions to, because a lot of people didn't know how to use the program. And other high schools don't even use Adobe programs for some of their media classes, or don't offer the extent of how in-depth our media classes are. So I felt really prepared. I definitely learned a lot like throughout university for sure, but going into it, I knew the basics, and I'm really grateful that my high school was able to teach me that at such a young age.
Honestly, and also the media arts teacher was good. There was two. There was like Ms. Sandra, who took off because I think she was pregnant at that time with twins, and there was Miss Cleary, and Miss Cleary was amazing. Like she was there for like the whole year, and she was amazing. She was such a great teacher. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, specifically Miss Cleary and Miss Alessandra, because I ended up having them for all my art classes from grade 10 to grade 12. Those two teachers specifically were absolutely lovely. When I was coming up with my portfolio for university, they took time outside of the classroom to review my portfolio and tell me what was important to put into it, which they really didn't need to because it wasn't part of like a high school class, but both of them went the extra mile to make sure that my portfolio was ready and gave really good feedback. So they were very good teachers in high school.
Speaking about your program, it's the, York University, Sheridan College, Specialized Honors in Graphics Design, so it's a joint program. Can you explain a bit about what that means and how it's different from one regular program at one institution?
Yeah, so the way the program works is that the bulk of your classes, I would say, are at York University. Because Sheridan College is technically still considered a college level, all my electives and mandatory electives, so I have to get a couple social science credits, natural science, etc., that needed to be taken at York University. But the cool thing about having a paired program, which quite a few programs have, I know there's a design one in Ottawa now that's paired with the college and the university, but I get double the amount of professors to give feedback. I have double the amount of like alumni that I have connections to in the future. The only downfall was that it was a bit of a commute there, but to be able to have like that opportunity to connect with more people and to experience two different campuses is something really unique that not a lot of people get to do, especially when it's not a specialized honor program. And a lot of people too think that when it's paired with the college that all the labs and hands-on classes were at Sheridan, whereas it was actually a mix because York University has a lot of smaller classes as well. So it was kind of like the best of both worlds. I got a taste of two different campuses, and I'm pretty happy that...
Would you say that the university culture or college culture, they're different because they're separate institutions, or did it feel like it was the same one that you were going back and forth between?
They both felt like a university, to be honest. Just because Sheridan is in the process of trying to become a university, they already offer undergrads in their programs. They're just still like refer to themselves as a college. So as far as like an education and campus standpoint, I felt like I was in university like the whole time. It was just like really personal because the classes and labs were really small. But I did take most of my classes at York just because I lived more so in that area, and that's just kind of the way it worked out. But I liked both equally for sure.
I was actually wondering, because you were mentioning about the portfolio earlier, can you talk a little bit about the application process to get into this program?
Yeah, so the application process for my specific program, besides having good grades, which obviously all programs kind of need, you do need to have a portfolio. When I was originally applying, I didn't know what was needed until I spoke to somebody that was graduating from my program. So portfolio pieces, usually 10 to 15. I had mine printed out, but these days everyone has them digital, so I definitely recommend creating a PDF or a website when you're including your pieces. A lot of my friends as well were visual artists, and they tried to put a lot of paintings and stuff like that, so I would definitely recommend that if you have more digital work, especially from high school for media arts and yearbook classes, include as much digital work as possible, because that is primarily what you'll be doing. But if you do have extra space, add your visual art. And then the other important thing too is I would say is quality over quantity. If you have 8 really good pieces, leave it at that. Do not put 20 pieces in just to show that you can do a lot of different things. The teachers don't really care that much, to be honest. They are going to be skipping through your portfolio. The other cool thing too that my program had was you could submit them online, and then you'll either get accepted or you won't, etc. Or you can actually visit the campus and get a portfolio interview, which I strongly recommend if you're in the area or possible to. I went all the way to Toronto, 5 hours from Ottawa just to do the interview, but you got to actually explain your choices for your work, which is more compelling for a prof to invite you to join the program, being able to say, I did this because of this and this choice because of this. And also just to be able to talk to a professor about the program before getting your acceptance was really great. So yeah, portfolio really important. Get an interview if you can.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that you got to choose between whether you could submit it online or go in person to talk about it. Were you nervous about that?
Oh, I was. Yeah, they kind of give you the option because there is students from out of town applying. But I just had the weekend off and I figured if I can, I will. I was very nervous applying. I didn't really know what to expect. But the professor that was interviewing me made me feel a lot more calm. And then I also got accepted after the interview, like in person, which was really nice. So as much as I was stressed, the stress kind of stopped as soon as the interview was over anyways. So yeah, it was a really good experience, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. And like for us, in terms of like the classes that you take, do you get to choose where you want to do certain classes and courses based on the university or college? Because it is two different institutions.
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the class that you're looking at. So, for example, the electives, like I had already mentioned, electives need to be taken at the university. And then certain classes are mandatory for first, second, third, or fourth years. So, for example, like this year, if it was in person, every fourth year design student has to take a class called Professional Aspects. And that is hosted at Sheridan College, and you don't have a say in it. Same thing within third year, History of Design is taken at York University and nobody has a say in it. Our actual labs themselves, outside of like the big classroom times, you get to pick. So editorial design, if you prefer it at York, prefer it at Sheridan, if you like a certain teacher, you get to pick, which is really nice. So you get to decide what you want.
Yeah, that's really cool. Did you do most of yours at York because you were closer, or did you find that you liked the Sheridan classes better?
I definitely did a lot more at York, primarily because of the convenience, but the experiences that I had at Sheridan were just as good. It was purely a convenience sake.
You don't want the commute to break you.
Yeah, it wasn't the best commute, just because for those of you who don't know, that Sheridan College is in Oakville, whereas York University is located in North York, Toronto. So they are technically different cities. So it took a hot minute to get there.
How long did it take? An hour, I would say, by train? Or...
Oh no, I would have to leave 2.5 hours early.
Holy
Oh
traffic?
my god!
To be early though, because I always give myself extra time.
Okay.
But you have to take a bus to a station to then take the go bus. Yeah, it was a while.
That's crazy. You know, graphics design is a big field. What are some different focuses or roles that people can choose as a graphics designer?
Yeah, graphic design is really big and it's pretty broad. A lot of people assume that we just do everything, but we definitely specialize the more comfortable you get in the field. So I'm personally very interested in editorial design, which is in reference to printed magazines. I also have a strong interest in brand identity, which is logos, style guides, etc. There's also website design, UX, UI design for mobile apps, etc. You could also go into typography, so you could be a designer for fonts, essentially. There's so many things that you could go into. I could literally go on for forever. You could be an illustrator as well. So a lot of people I know that originally started in visual arts and are good at drawing become digital artists and are referred to as illustrators in the field. The possibilities are endless. Most people enjoy like 2 or 3 different specializations, but we all kind of know like a bit of each of them.
Cool. What has been your favorite course so far, and which one has had the most impact on you for working in the industry?
I would say that my favorite course and biggest impact are definitely the same course. So it'd be editorial design that's offered in third year. That was my absolute favorite experience as a class. The way that it was run, the way it was taught, the project, how proud I was of my final project, which was essentially just making a magazine beginning to end. And there was no rules, which was really, really satisfying. When you get to the older years, the projects become a lot more broad, where they just kind of tell you what to do. Like, you have to make a magazine, figure it out. But then I pick literally every aspect of what I want to do about it. And it was cool too, because all my peers did completely different directions, and to compare all of ours at the end, it was very, very cool. Yeah.
That does sound cool. What was your project's focus on?
So my project, I entitled it Link. So I did a magazine based on streetwear and like women in streetwear. So I included a lot of photography, like I mentioned I was interested in. So a lot of fashion photography, a couple articles about that. Bright orange was like the main color for it. So it was a really cool piece. That one's on my portfolio as well.
Yo, that's really unique. Bright orange. Is that your favorite color?
I originally picked that because I wanted to do green, but I couldn't achieve the bright level of green with the ink that I was using for that printer. So orange looked like a bright color that I could use as a backup. That was not the original plan. It is one of my preferred colors now after seeing it so much, but yeah, it was supposed to be green.
Yeah, you're one of the lucky people who have met their role model, and you were even more inspired by them. Can you tell us about who it is and how you met them?
So going off of what I was saying about editorial class and it being my favorite class ever, the teacher for editorial, to make it even better, is one of my design role models. His name is Paul Sitch. He is an instructor at the York University for design. He is a incredibly talented designer, a very talented professor. The way that he talks about work and describes things and gives critique, and the way that he even teaches very much levels with how I like to be taught and how I like my feedback, etc. He's also incredibly blunt, but very supportive at the same time. He's kind of just everything I would want in a teacher, and his work that he creates is absolutely mind-boggling. He's so talented, one of the most talented designers like I've ever met, so I'm so happy I got the opportunity to be his student for a year.
What kind of work has he done before?
So one of his most known works was the CoverGirl logo that was created a few years back when they did their rebranding. He's a type designer besides being a graphic designer, so he created the custom typography that CoverGirl makeup uses. Yeah, which is really, really neat going in on his portfolio, seeing CoverGirl in big letters.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
You were talking about, I think, Typescript? Is that a course that you guys take in university?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few typography courses that you can take. My program specifically, you do have to take 3 different typography classes, which are incredibly important and have taught everybody like the very basics of typesetting and type design. But then the course that I took as an elective this past, about a year ago, I guess, was typeface design. So the entire course for that wasn't learning about how to set a type. It was how to design one and how to actually make it work on your computer and what type designers do, which I didn't ever think I was going to be doing. It was very fun. It was very time consuming, but that was one of my favorite classes for university for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it's also kind of hard. Because you don't realize like that the fonts that you get on your computer for whatever software that you use is actually made by somebody. Which is really crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like outside design just kind of click it and they're like, oh, let me bold it real quick. Whereas when you're behind the scenes, you have to manually create like the alphabet,
special
and then
characters,
all of the like punctuation. Yeah, secondary characters, the punctuation, the letter numbers, then everything in capitals, and then that's just one. That's just your regular typeface. And now if you want to do a bold, you want to do an italic, if you want to do like a thin version, a wider version, like, oh my goodness. And then on top of that, like there's a lot of like less of the simpler typefaces have like a variety of different weights. So it's not just regular and bold. It would be like ultra thin, book, Roman, regular, bold, heavy, extra bold.
That's crazy.
And all of that, like it's a lot of work. I respect the type designers. I will never be going into that industry, but I respect them a lot.
A lot of patience. A lot of patience. So, I'm actually wondering, Sarah, because I've known you and I know that you're very studious and very creative. Do you get writer's block, and how do you get motivated to, like, you know, keep pushing forward and all when your back's against the wall?
Yeah, getting creative block is definitely something that happens a lot. I think in any creative field. For myself specifically, I usually take a step back from whatever I'm working on. If I'm just completely blocked, I will take a step back, close my laptop, and do something that has nothing to do with technology, whether it be going on a walk, a run, dancing, etc. Just something completely different so that when I reopen it with fresh eyes, usually ideas will just come to me when I just haven't looked at it for a little bit. And then my backup, which most people use, is Pinterest.
Yeah.
I do Pinterest quite a bit and get some inspiration from there.
Make a Pinterest board. I've recently started using Pinterest to redecorate my room. Just find some designs. It really helps. It's inspirational, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super inspirational. And I feel like the other thing too is that when I look on Pinterest and I search like design related things, I'll often see an idea and then think, oh, how could I do like the opposite of this? And so sometimes it works as inspiration, but sometimes it's kind of like an idea of how to do something a completely different way. So as much as it inspires me, I actually end up with a piece that looks nothing like what I originally saw. If that makes any sense. But yeah.
No, that makes sense, yeah. Alright, so now we're gonna play one of our favorite games that we like to play on this podcast series. It's called Rapid Fire Round. We're gonna ask you a couple of questions, and for each question, you have 5 seconds to answer each one. And Rafid's gonna time you.
If you could buy anything right now, what would it be?
An apartment in downtown Toronto.
Wow, you must have really liked Toronto, huh?
I do, but the to live there and to buy an apartment,
expensive, yeah.
Not ideal. Yeah.
That is the dream. That makes sense. Next question. What's your dream job?
Being an art director for a high-end fashion magazine.
All right. What fortune would you want to get from a fortune cookie?
That you're gonna do well in your life.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll give her that one.
Next question.
I'll give her that
This
one.
one is easy.
That's a good one.
Where were you born?
Oh, I was born in Ottawa, in Ontario. Yeah.
Ottawa gang.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. What makes you annoyed?
Oh, I could mouth chewers. People that don't walk on the right side of the sidewalk. Like I could go on.
Oh my god, that one drives me crazy too. It's so crazy because in Toronto, people know that you walk on the right. Wherever you are, it's, you know, if you're on the sidewalk, if you're crossing the street, if you're on an escalator, walk on the right. But when I came to Ottawa, it was not like conventional for people to do that, and it always annoyed me.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
Relatable.
I think it's only because of the fact that like it's so spread out, like the population, and there's not that many people, so like anyone could go anywhere, right?
Yeah, I think so.
There's
in
no,
Toronto, it's a little bit more congested, so people have to kind of have some some rules in that sense. Yeah. Next question. What is something that you can't do?
I can't do?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. What can I do? I can't draw very well. We'll do that, okay?
Interesting. That's very interesting to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear that from a lot of designers, but I definitely prefer doing stuff on my computer.
I relate though. Like Dorita knows that my drawing versus my my designs. Yeah. My Figma design is like on a whole other level. Yeah. Yeah, I relate to that. Okay, last question. Are you ready for this? How do you manage stress?
Oh, I cook.
Nice.
I feel like that's like
easy.
a random answer, but I love cooking. I dedicate 1 hour a day to doing that.
Wow.
De-stresses
What's
me.
the one? Do you have a stress recipe? Like a recipe you make when you're stressed?
No, I just I think that if I'm stressed or like really like annoyed with looking at my computer, I will just make something that takes a really long time. It doesn't really matter what it is, but something that'll take like a solid hour and a half and like is not fast. That's what I'll usually do.
Yeah. Do you look up recipes or do you just throw things in?
So kind of similar to me using design on Pinterest. I'll go on Pinterest, I'll see something that looks kind of good, and then I'll just make something with maybe like one of that ingredient, and it just gave me an idea.
Wow, that's crazy. Do they always turn out tasty?
Yeah, I think there was only one time in the last 3 years where I made something and I was like, that's not good at all. Yeah, I love cooking.
What has been your favorite dish so far that you've made?
I don't know how to narrow it down. I don't know, because I cook like every day.
Yeah.
Like today's dinner, absolutely delicious. Not to like
What was it?
No, for sure. No, it's right.
What
It's food. It's food. Okay, people are passionate about their cooking.
Yeah, today I had a lentil bulgur bowl with butternut squash, seared halloumi, and kale with like a pomegranate dressing, and it slapped. Yeah.
Damn.
Yo, that sounded so fancy.
Look at that.
It was really good. Like, I'm so full, but now I want more just thinking about it.
Gordon Ramsay wants to know your location.
Honestly, better than Carlton cafeteria food.
Don't even get me started.
But thank you for playing. That was really awesome. Good answers. Back to some serious questions. You started a sorority with your friends in university, which is completely mind-blowing and incredible. Can you share the process behind how it all started and how it was created? What the process is behind holding a sorority?
Yeah, when I was in first year, myself and 3 other peers/friends had joined a different sorority, and we had a pretty negative experience in regards to like hazing and just mean girls in general. So when we were going into second year, we were talking about how the Greek life population at York University was a lot smaller than compared to like Ryerson or like Carleton, etc. So we thought we still wanted to join Greek life, but Greek life was so small. So we started talking to some of our friends from other organizations about what the possibilities for us to do was. So I had a friend in a Carleton sorority, a friend in a fraternity that was international in Toronto, another friend in Manitoba. So I got to hear all these different perspectives. So me and those 3 friends kind of sat down and I was like, hey, listen, we all want to be in a sorority. York University needs more Greek life in general. Why don't we just do it? We'll become a local sorority and we'll get the help that we need from our friends from other organizations, which is kind of just how it started it all. And they were all like, this is a crazy idea, but why not? Like, what have we got to lose kind of thing? So then in September of 2018, we officially formed Kappa Phi Xi sorority. And since then, we just finished Rush this September. So we have 33 active members. We've raised thousands of dollars for charity. We've had 3 different classes join us. And I've made like an amazing group of friends. So it's been a really positive experience since we started the whole thing.
That is incredible. How do you guys launch a sorority? Do you have to go, for example, like to a council and say, hey, I'm launching a sorority named Kappa Phi Xi, or?
So it depends on what direction you're going into. The original idea that we kind of were inspired by just doing a local sorority where it's just us, no other schools have us, was inspired by one that is actually in Ottawa called Xi Delta Theta. So I had a friend in Xi Delta Theta who basically just said, we're associated with Carleton University and Ottawa University's Greek Council, and it's just our location, nobody else has us. Whereas some of my other friends in fraternities are international, and there's like 200 locations. And then for them, they would have to go to a big council and like propose that they wanted to start a new chapter, etc. So we chose to go in the direction of the local. It just seemed like the best choice for us at the time. And I'm glad that we did choose to just like start up as a local. So we got a lot of advice from other local sororities and just worked out.
Awesome. And your role as a recruitment chair, what does that role entail, and what are some of the lessons that it taught you?
So I'm recruitment chair right now. Before that, I was president, so I kind of have seen like a smaller role and a bigger role before. So it's a lot of work, I would say. Recruitment chair essentially plans and hosts all of the Rush events, which happens twice a year. So essentially September and January of every year, there's like weeks on end, like a few weeks at a time, with a bunch of events, and people who are other students at the university want to see if they're interested in joining. So all these events are free, and they kind of just come out, see if they like the atmosphere, if this is an organization that they would be interested in joining. And then if they choose to join, then they begin the process from there. But I essentially organize and plan all the events for those 2 months of the year.
Yeah, that's super awesome. What happened during this season's recruiting? Was it all virtual?
Yeah, so this was a lot different than years past, obviously. Originally, we were planning on doing half in person and half virtual. All the things in person, like temperature check upon arrival, only outdoors, hand sanitizer, masks, like etc. Like we took the precautions incredibly seriously. Unfortunately, we were only able to have one in-person event before Toronto bylaws changed the rules for COVID as the cases increased. So the remainder of Rush this season was online, which was fine. I think that we adapted well to it. We did like a couple different events online, like Netflix party and like a game night. There's a lot of good websites that you can use for your organizations online. So we did best with what we could, and I think it was still pretty successful in the end.
Yeah, you guys have 33 active members now. That must be super awesome.
Yeah, and then we just gave out 10 bids to the girls that came out to Rush this month, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's really great to hear, like, some of the things that you guys are actually doing, because I don't know if you know, but there are some mixed perceptions about sororities, usually attributed to, like, TV and movies. Do you think the real sororities are just as cutthroat as, like, the ones that are portrayed by the media, per se?
I think that the media exaggerates things quite a bit. I also, what's an important thing to mention is that sororities and fraternities in Ottawa, or not specifically in Ottawa, in Canada, are a lot different than what they are in the States. Like, all around, very, very different. Like, ours specifically, like, we don't have a big house that everybody lives in. That's, like, not a thing. There are girls that live from, like, on the other side of town that come on out. We put charity, like, on the top priority for us. We do, like, minimum 2 philanthropy events a month. Whereas, like, in the media, it's kind of like a bunch of bimbos that just go to parties and stuff like that. That's definitely not the case for us. We do have, like, socializing events, etc. But philanthropy and just gaining leadership and communication skills within our members is, like, the bigger priority and the bigger picture for us.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. What are some of the values that you guys foster as part of a sorority?
So our 3 main values are courage, loyalty, and respect.
Nice. Sounds like Gryffindor house.
Interesting. Those are really good values. Oh my god.
I'm a Harry Potter nerd.
I love that.
Alright, so you're the design editor for Artichoke Magazine. Can you tell us about the magazine, how you got this opportunity in the first place?
When I was in 3rd year, I was looking for opportunities to design for around my campus. I wasn't really sure what I was looking for, and I stumbled upon Artichoke Magazine. So it's a monthly, it gets published every month, and it is the Winters Free Press of Winters College. So essentially, the writers and the audience are from Winters College, meaning that they are an art student at York University, whether design, performance, a vocalist, theater, film, etc. That's who it's about and who the audience is for. So when I was in 3rd year, I had applied as a designer just to see what would happen. Didn't really think much of it. And then I basically just got assigned to design 1 to 2 spreads every month for the whole year. And then this past April, I got an email from the past design editor, who was absolutely lovely and has been very helpful throughout this whole process. And she was looking for a new design editor because she was graduating. So I reached out to just see what would happen, and I got an interview with Winters College, and then I got hired. So I began this past summer. So now being in the leadership role, I have 15 designers that work under me. So I assign all the designers their what they need to do, like their assignments and their projects each month. I get to pick who does what, and then at the end of the month, which I just completed yesterday actually, because our next issue just came out if you guys want to check it out, I had to compile everybody's submissions all together and then edit them from there. So if somebody made a typo somewhere, if some color wasn't the right color, if the font wasn't the right font, if a picture needed to be taken out, etc., I would go through each and every spread and just make sure it was as perfect as can be.
How do you choose which assignment to assign to a team member?
So I think it depends on like what assignments I get given. We hired a lot of writers this year. In years past, we've had issues with like 40 pages. This year, it's always been over 100. So it's been quite a bit. If they're an upper year student, like a 4th year, as opposed to a 1st year that's on the team, I usually assign them more spreads than the other. Or if somebody is really good in like photography laying out and less so in typesetting, and I knew that from their portfolio, I'll assign somebody like what article and what pieces make the most sense for their style of design.
Okay, I see. And in what sense do you think that your role as the design editor is different from graphics designer? Are there some things that as a design editor you can't do unless you were a graphics designer?
So as a design editor, you kind of get to do both at the same time, which is really nice. So when I was just a designer for the team, I would just get assigned a spread and just do it. Whereas being in the design editor position, I get to pick what spreads I want to actually design. And I get to do the cover too, which is pretty cool. And then, so besides doing the actual design work like I did before, I get to communicate with the entire Artichoke executive team. So with their editor-in-chief, assistant editor-in-chief, and social media coordinator. And then I get to assign everybody everything. I get my own email. I get a position on Winters College Council. I also get paid honorarium, which is pretty cool. The executive team gets paid honorarium, whereas the designers are more so doing it to get some experience outside of the classroom.
Okay,
so it's everything and more.
Yeah. How many releases do you guys have? How many?
So at the moment we have 2. We kind of publish as the academic year goes on. So with our first issue is September when school starts and so forth. So the second issue just came out today.
Nice.
Interesting. And especially like, you know, you are working at Artichoke, like more so a student organization. What's it like when you were working as like a freelance graphic designer, and how did you start building that credential?
Yeah, so I started doing freelance when I was 15 or 16.
That's young.
Yeah, it was pretty young for sure. I think that's the case for like most designers that go into freelance. They usually start when they're younger and just get a job when they can. I do freelance like incredibly part-time amount. If a job comes up, I'm going to do it, but I don't usually actively seek them out. So some weeks I'll have like 4 things to do, and then other times it'll be like a couple months without work. So it's kind of just more as a side hustle for the time being while I'm in school and pursuing like other activities, etc. But yeah, I got into it when I was 15 and have been doing it ever since.
And what are some of your favorite projects that you've taken on as a freelance?
So one of my favorites, which I mentioned we were doing the pre-recording, was when I was 17, so still fairly young and in high school. My dance studio at the time was Elite Dance Studio, and they were talking about getting new merchandise, and I basically begged the director of the studio to let me design so I would have something for my portfolio. And the designs that I showed them, most of them were not very good looking back at it now, but one of them they did like, and they still use them 4 years later on their merchandise every year. So That is definitely one of my favorite pieces, to see it getting printed all the time. And then on top of that, the first year when I had designed it, I remember the first dance competition we had when all the clothing came out. I walked into the building and every single person on my team and their parents was wearing a shirt with my design on it. And that was absolutely surreal. That was one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah, that actually sounds so fulfilling, that like you made a huge impact on like so many people and you get to see it like right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, I think for anybody in the creative industry, being able to see your work in use for what it was designed for, incredibly satisfying. It's basically, seeing your hard work get put on display. Really, really good feeling.
And I also want to, just go back to like both like your experience like with Artichoke and also your experience with freelancing. What were the main lessons you learned out of these two, initiatives that you took?
I think both of them, I learned very different things from each other. I think both of those opportunities kind of helped me gear what I want to do as a designer like long term. Being a freelancer, I learned how to talk to clientele that's not a designer, which is something a lot harder than I've had to deal with in the past.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, because working with a design team, you understand like principles of design and like you comprehend what the goal is. Whereas if you are doing freelance, you are working for somebody that knows nothing about design, and that's why they're hiring you. So sometimes, as much as the customer's always right, you kind of have to push them for what good design is, which is something really hard that I think is really important for freelancers to be doing. And then on top of that, like learning what price points are appropriate for your skill level. That's something really important in freelance. Whereas in Artichoke, I am working in a leadership role with designers under me, and I'm basically in charge of the entire art direction. Even the editor-in-chief, she corrects, she's wonderful to work with, first of all. Her name is Laura. We love her. She kind of corrects like the grammatical errors, whereas the art direction is completely free range for me. Whereas in freelance, it's kind of like, what does the client kind of want? What are they suggesting? So it's a completely different approach for both of those things, for sure.
Oh yeah.
And what skills would you recommend high schoolers start adopting now in order to do well in graphics design?
If your school offers media classes, to take them, whether it's photography, media arts, yearbook, etc., any class that has to do with media, take them. If not, do visual arts, but take the media classes. And then also too, the bare bones for graphic design, we use Adobe. So learn Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign as soon as you're able to. Students get a discount, so if you can get using the programs sooner rather than later, it's going to help long term.
Yeah. Especially because they're really expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say are the differences between the three softwares?
So all three are used for completely different things, but depending on what your project is, you might use them all. So Photoshop, which is different from Lightroom, is basically for manipulating like one photo but like to an extreme extent. So you're not just changing around the lighting and taking away like a zit or something like that. A lot of people use it to make like an actual like, composition itself. If you're like changing somebody's outfit completely or taking away background, etc., Photoshop will be that. So mostly photography. Illustrator is a vector-based program. So logos, branding, etc., I use Illustrator probably the most. And then InDesign is a really, really great tool for like multiple page booklets or etc. So if you're doing a magazine, you're doing a book, whatever you're working on that's multiple pages, printed or not, but printed works really well on it as well. That's what you'll be using it for. So, for example, when I did the Link magazine that I'd mentioned before, I would edit some pictures using Lightroom or Photoshop, and then I would make some graphics and some custom type on Illustrator, but then I would bring it all in to InDesign to assemble what the page is going to look like for editorial aspects.
Wow, that was a whole process.
Yeah, there's quite a few steps.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like so fulfilling to hear like the difference, because like you hear people being like, I'm gonna use Illustrator for this, or I'm gonna use like Photoshop for this,
and you never know what is the difference.
Yeah.
You know?
When I was coming into the program, I didn't know how to use Illustrator, and I was only comfortable with Photoshop, so I kept trying to use things that I should be doing on Illustrator or on Photoshop, and then it wasn't until second year where I was like, this is taking too much time, like I need to learn how to use the program, and now I specifically use the programs with what they're supposed to be meant for.
And it's probably a ton faster, right?
Yes, it is. And being able to do that on my MacBook as well, rotating between all the programs is like super complimentary. All the Apple products, just Adobe works very nicely on them.
Yeah, they do.
Like compared to what the computer I was using beforehand, like if I use my iPad to hand draw a sketch, I can click a button and it'll open up on my MacBook, has a vector already in Illustrator. So it is very, very convenient to have MacBook products if you're able to have them, and switching between all the Adobe programs, they make it so that it's possible to switch seamlessly.
Yeah, definitely. And Steve Jobs was a designer, and he wanted to make something like actually be easier for designers to use, right? So MacBook is definitely recommended for like all sorts of designers and creative artists. Yeah,
would definitely recommend, because when I originally went into the program, I did not have a MacBook. Love mine now. I'm never going to switch back. But if you're going into the field, you will be switching eventually, so you might as well be comfortable early.
Perfect. And besides graphic design, what else are you just genuinely passionate about?
So kind of like how I mentioned before, cooking is one of my bigger passions. And then on top of cooking, dancing. I've been dancing for about 16 years now, and like we already mentioned as well, I'm an instructor for the York Lions Dance Club. So those are probably like my two biggest passions outside design.
What's your favorite dance style?
I don't want to pick one. I'd say that my top three, if I'm allowed to give you top three.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Jazz, contemporary, and hip hop.
Yo, so cool. Such a variety, actually.
Yeah, they're all pretty different from
each
other.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for students joining university or even looking for graphic design internships?
So joining university, I would definitely say visit your campus and talk to people that are actually in the program. When I came to visit and I talked to somebody in the program, that's when I made my decision that York University was my first choice. So that is incredibly helpful. You can't just read stuff online, because their websites will be biased to make you want to come to their program. So definitely recommend visiting if you're able to, or even to just communicate with an actual student. And then as far as internships go, reach out to ones that don't say that they're hiring. And if your teacher gives you a list to apply to these places, apply to other places on top of that. And don't be scared to follow up with anybody. Just pester them with emails. Like, there's nothing bad that can come out of that. And yeah, and even when you're reaching out, just send your portfolio. Even if they don't say they're hiring, it cannot hurt at all.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big one. Don't be afraid to take that initiative.
Yeah, the initiative is really important. Like, both places I had the opportunity to work at the summer, neither of them were listed as companies from my school, and neither of them posted that they were hiring interns or even had an internship program. And I just reached out to them on a limb, sent my portfolio without even knowing if they're hiring, and they both worked out. So definitely recommend that.
Like Michael Scott used to say from The Office, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That is incredible advice.
Yeah.
Like, ever since Rafik has told me this, like, this summer, right? And I didn't know this before, but it really sunk in. And every time I'm scared to do something, I'm scared to apply somewhere, I think back to that advice and think, you miss the shots that you don't take, so take them, The worst thing you can do is not get a reply back. She's like, hey.
100%. And even so, like, some of the places I was interested in this summer that were my top choices, like, originally, I didn't get a reply back, but at the end of the day, like, oh well, because I got other opportunities that came from it, so.
Always try.
For sure. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your journey with us. And it was really interesting to, like, get to know your perspective of, like, the design field, especially because, like, when we had Gregory Cotton from episode, I think, 6 was it, to talk about product design and UI UX design, it's a really good contrast to know graphics design and know the differences between the two. You're an amazing designer, and I looked at your website, really beautiful, and you gave a really good background on what a joint program is like and your experiences working in the industry as well. And I hope the audience, like, takes everything in and takes your pointers for their own personal growth and journeys and their future towards design in general. I really think that you gave really good advice in that regard.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show, guys. I really enjoyed all the conversation.
Yes.
If you'd like to hear anything more about Sarah, please reach out to her, check her portfolio out. Her website is carrieredesigns.com and her Instagram is carrieredesigns. All in the description below.
Be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at Capital Interns on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're not already, follow and subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts to be notified of all our latest episodes. The next guest, our last guest actually, on the podcast is a dear friend of mine. She is currently an associate product manager at JUICE, which is the Joint US-China Cooperation for Clean Energy, is a journalist, and has traveled to multiple places across the world to find the career path that best suits her. Stay tuned as we delve into our guests' passions, experience, and personal life. Bye.
Bye.